Morning. I'm sure you're familiar with the rule of threes. It's a common trope in the prepper sphere. My glasses are sideways. I know, my bad. So 3 seconds without hope, which is wrong because there's lots of hopeless people that are still alive. Pastor Joe Fox of Viking Preparedness talks about that all the time. Hey, dispatch, I'm trying to touch the people. 3 minutes without air, which is also a generalization. It's more like 4, but different conversation. 3 days without water, although 2% dehydration begin to impact the efficiency and efficacy of your prefrontal cortex, so don't be dehydrated even a little bit. 3 weeks without food, which is possible, but your physical output is going to be greatly diminished probably by day 2 or 3 because there's no fuel in the machine and your body's consuming intramuscular and visceral fat for fuel, which is great if you need to get rid of some of that or a lot of that. But from a preparedness standpoint, you don't want to go 3 weeks without food, right? But anyway, that's the idea, the rule of threes, right? So I was thinking about this morning. I was hopping in the truck. 3 minutes without air. What does that look like? Well, it's not just if you fall into a lake and somebody is drowning, that if they go 3 minutes without breathing, that they will asphyxiate, they'll drown, or that they'll suffocate. You know, if you get locked into some kind of room or something where there's no fresh air, you suffocate. It's also 3 minutes without air. My brain goes a couple of places here. One is CBRNE, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and environmental. And this is one of those areas that I think most of the prepper sphere pays lip service to, but doesn't quite understand. Or at a minimum, they've stacked the threat matrix wrong on this. Because when you bring up CBRNE, people will talk about, oh yeah, you know, ballistic missiles, North Korea, Iran, question mark, you know, BB's like, oh, you know, Iran can hit, yeah. Is it Iran or is it someone else, BB? Yeah, the Samson option, but I digress. Yeah, and then Russia's got missiles and China, but yeah, missiles, cool. Definitely an existential threat for sure. To say nothing of the fact that my entire life, existential threats have been paraded across the media in order to get people bought in to spend taxpayer money and send their sons halfway around the world to go bleed and die on behalf of the beast system. But I digress. When it comes to CBRNE, the expert in my circles is Ed from Iridium Solutions, the Iridium Group, Snowbird. Excellent brother, excellent teacher, guest instructor with Refuge when his schedule allows, and essentially Refuge Canada. If you're north of the imaginary line in the snow, if there's anything we can do for you, contact Ed at the Iridium Group. Just Google the Iridium Group, you'll find him. Or he may jump in the comments, who knows? He's a busy guy. But here's my point. The CBRNE threat does not begin with missiles half a world away. It begins with the immediate area around where you are, where you live, where you work, where you travel. This gets into area study and area familiarity. You would be amazed, likely, even if you live out in the middle of nowhere, squirrel, literally, you'd be amazed what industry exists in your immediate area of operations. Not to be confused with your AOR, your area of responsibility, but your area of operations, where you live, where you're working, where you're traveling. These industries that produce, consume, or store all kinds of chemicals that are potentially very bad for you. Now, the reason I bring this up is one of the tertiary darlings of the prepper community is this: what kind of gas mask should I get? Should I get a Mira? Should I get an Avon? Should I get an old Israeli gas mask with a fresh canister? Should I blah 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 blah? Well, you see, gas masks and canisters, SCBA systems as well, self-contained breathing apparatus, all of those things have different ratings. In other words, very rarely is it a one-size-fits-all solution. In fact, even with the masks, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Gotten a lot of questions from y'all like, when will I know that I need to put my gas mask on? Okay, well, if you need me to tell you via the internet to put your gas mask on, you're probably not going to make it. That goes back to the 3 minutes without air rule. Okay, if I think that threat is imminent, I will very likely not have a beard at that point. That's what we would call an indicator. However, if I think that threat's imminent, I'm also very likely not going to be producing content where you will observe bear without a beard. So you gotta figure that thing out for yourself, is my point. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but the threat doesn't begin half a world away. It begins within a 10-mile circle, a 10-mile radius of your house and where you work. It may be where you work, depending on what you do for a living. And there's plenty of benign chemicals that exist out there that people have access to. And if you add the wrong thing to the wrong thing, congratulations, you've made mustard gas or whatever. What's that? Can you tell me? No. No. Now, when the internet was in its infancy, there was a thing that was out there called the Anarchist's Cookbook. And I may have printed that out and put it in a binder 20 years ago plus. Super interesting stuff. I think at this point, if you did that, I got bumped up a notch on the watch lists that I'm on just by mentioning it on camera. So CBRNE, right? Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, environmental. Okay. We'll start with the environment that's around you. Look at the chemicals that are being used around you, produced around you, manufacturers. And there's all kinds of stuff out there. There's an app, I think it's called ERG, Echo Romeo Golf, ERG. And you download that. If you've ever seen hazmat placards, or DOT placards, the diamond-shaped placards that are on the back of semis, straight trucks, on the sides of barrels and totes, all those different numbers, like 1993 diesel fuel. Okay. Well, all those placards exist for a reason, to be able at a glance be able to ascertain what's inside of those containers and the threat that those containers represent. It's another thing. East Palestine, Ohio, right? Train derailment, major chemical spill. So how close are you to rail lines, and what is typically moved on those rail lines? Now, that's not a 100% solid assessment at any one time, because they're train cars. It could be anything getting moved down those rail lines. But by and large, what do they move? Mostly what gets moved around here is coal. Yeah, because the area that I'm in is actually very rich in coal, which is its own environmental threat on a long enough timeline. So, 3 minutes without air. Gas mask, should I have one? Maybe. But not because of Russia or China or Iran or North Korea or the nation state of Middle Eastern New Jersey or anybody else. First, what's within 10 miles of my house? What are the directions of the prevailing winds? Then go bigger circle out from there. Where's the nearest nuclear power plant? How far away is that? What is the direction of the prevailing wind? What are the operational, strategic, military targets in my environment? And what are the directions of the prevailing wind? Are you turning or are you just faking it? Here we go. All right. So, area study. In the Prepper Classroom, Bear Independent YouTube channel, Prepper Classroom playlist. I know you're gonna have to tap the little button twice more with your thumb than you normally do. Oh, the burden. You know what? That's too high friction. I'm not doing it anymore. I don't have 2 spare thumb taps to find a playlist on YouTube. Ugh. Prepper Classroom. There's standalone content on developing an area study and what that should look like. And then also I will refer you yet again to Mike Shelby, Forward Observer and Gray Zone Activity and whatever his current brand is called now. But you could just put in Mike Shelby Area Study into the YouTube search bar and find him. He's got lots of great content on that. In any event, I want to know what's in my area, thus I'm going to do an area study. Hopefully that makes sense. The other 3 minutes without air that I want to talk about. Air is not just what we breathe. Air is also space. Follow me more closely and everybody's going to find out how Bear reacts to that on camera. You little burnt orange piece of crap car. Air's not just what we breathe. Air is also this space above the ground, up in the air. Air is also bandwidth on the air, on the net. Okay, think about the on-air signs on, in filming studios and on stages and sets. Okay, so 3 minutes without air. So when we think about 3 minutes without air, let's go to on the air first. That goes into intel, which goes into network. And the most important intel we can have is, again, the intel that's closest to us. What is happening here, now? What is the boots on the ground truth to the best of our ability to ascertain here, within 10 miles of where I am right now? Because that has the most immediate potential negative effects on me and the people that I love right here. I care what China's doing, and Russia, and North Korea, and the nation state, and everybody else. I care about that. But not near as much as I care about what's happening here. And so I need a way to ascertain what's happening here. And getting back to on air, or 3 minutes without air, I have it on good authority, and I have been saying this my entire YouTube career. Okay, so admitting my biases here, I think this is not only possible, but plausible, with a high likelihood, very high likelihood, high confidence assessment, that when it goes down, whatever it may be, it's going to be everything at the same time, all at once. And municipal services are going to go away almost immediately through a combination of strategic and tactical attacks on the electrical grid, to include cyber attacks, zero-day exploits, Stuxnet and Siemens PLCs, programmable logic controllers, cascading grid failure. Okay, when that happens, plus attacks on infrastructure, it's very simple to take the grid down. I built a large part of it. I know how it's put together. I know how to take it apart again. And shockingly easy. Okay? So, no electricity means no municipal services. The average municipality has 36 hours of water stored up because they use electric pumps to pump it into stand tanks, stand pipes, aka water towers, which creates the hydraulic pressure that pushes it out of the pipes. They use electric pumps to move sewage around. They use electricity at the water treatment plants. Electricity is what runs the internet. Electricity is what, blah, blah, blah. You can't pump fuel, no logistics, no ability to elevate medically. There's no hospitals. There's no commo. No commo. We're not on air anymore. So when you build out your intel networks, which is really just who are people that I have relationships with, that I can share information with, aka have conversations with. You need a way to communicate. You need protocols to communicate face to face, not digital or analog, UHF, VHF, HF, encrypted, channel hopping, privacy codes, blah, blah. All that stuff's great, and there's lots of applications for that. Got a radio right here. Not to be confused with the radio I have right there in the dash. So there's absolutely times for that. But our ability to go 3 minutes without air, okay? What happens when air goes away, when we can't be on air anymore? Now, people will get into backup generation. I've got solar, I've got wind, I've got battery backup. I hooked up 2 neodymium magnets together and got them to spin to make free energy. Whatever you're into, bro. Here's the other thing, 3 minutes. Burnt orange Ford GT Mustang, Oklahoma plates, red. I remember you, sir or madam. I will see you again. Emanation and decimation. The bandwidth will be contested. You don't think that bad guys have the ability to jam radio communications? They do. You don't think that bad guys have the ability to locate radio emanations? They do. And there's ways to mitigate that, like how much power you use when you transmit, how you transmit, when you transmit, terrain masking, etc., etc. But over-dependence upon radios will get you killed, because every single electronic emanation is targetable. Individual Wi-Fi routers, yours, mine, everybody else's, are targetable from space. Okay? Low Earth orbit. Individual routers. LEDs, light emitting diodes. Individual LEDs, including the ones in your PEC 15 or your IR illuminator or your whatever, are targetable. Can't say more about that other than it's true. That's crazy, Bear. I haven't seen any reporting on it. You're not gonna see reporting on it. That's why I'm telling it to you. You don't have to believe me, but I believe me. It has altered how I do things. Okay? Something to be said for plain old incandescent bulbs. So, continuing. Emanation versus decimation on air. We need to be careful what our electronic signature looks like in a, what would we call it? If this thing goes hot and there's Civil War 2.0 at the same time that there's World War 3, which is likely because everything everywhere all at once. It's the only way. A house divided against itself cannot stand. It's the only way that our enemies are going to be able to take us right now, even in our degraded state. We just have more manpower, capability, technology, equipment, dominance than everybody else. And so it's going to take a coalition, an alliance, an axis of evil amongst all these other players to attempt to take the United States out as the world superpower. And the resources that the United States has include its energy and its people. And so that's going to be attacked in 5th gen, 6th gen asymmetric warfare. So the bandwidth, literal, the air will be contested. Okay? So when we talk about signals and emitting signals, signals intelligence and counter signals intelligence is incredibly important. So you want to be thinking about 3 minutes without air. How do I collect information tactically here within 10 miles of my house so that I can operate here where I am without giving away my position and giving the enemy something that they can target? That's really important. How do I communicate? Not with my cool guy radios, even though there's absolutely applications for that. Humanitarian aid, gotta have it. Gotta have it. Disasters of any variety. Without commo, we don't get the job done, because without commo, there's no logistics. Which is why we've seen, they're now saying that it's China is the one that is trying to, and successfully in many cases, take the cell towers offline and the cell network offline here in the United States of America. I don't know if that I'd buy that. If it was me, I would want everybody to blame China too. But I digress. See, there's lots of nuggets in here, from the tactical all the way up to the strategic, man. Lots of nuggets if people are listening. Make sure you share this with somebody. I would really appreciate that, because that's the only way the channel grows. So when we think about 3 minutes without air, it's not just your ability to breathe. It's your ability to communicate. There's so many layers, there's so many onion layers, so many levels to this game of preparedness that at its most basic it is, you got to have oxygen that you can put in your lungs. You go more than 3 minutes, asterisk, we're going to have problems. However, it's way more than that. It's also, like I said, area study, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, environmental, which means I got to know what's around me and which way the wind's blowing, literally, which way the wind's blowing, and at what time of year, because that changes season to season. I'm in Oklahoma. The wind comes from everywhere where I am in Oklahoma, because warm air from the south and hot air from the north likes to get together and get into fist fights here in Oklahoma, which is why we have tornadoes. So the wind's always coming from a different direction. Well, that's a problem. So how do I mitigate against that? It's a different video. That's at a minimum an hour-long conversation. But I gotta know what the threats are around me and from which direction they're coming from, and at least have a baseline for prevailing wind direction seasonally around here, which you're likely to forget at some point, which means it's got to be written down. It's got to be inside of your binder, your prepper notebook, your whatever, thumb drive, whatever. And then I got to be able to get on air until, depending on what the threat looks like, I'm not on air at all. Because even the most basic emanations down to an LED can be targeted. And we need to be thinking about that. Okay? I've said it before, and I will say it again. These existential crisis rectangles that we carry around, at some point, they're going in the trash. Smash them with a hammer, set them on fire, burn them, and then bury them. And that's not hyperbole. Smash them with a hammer, set them on fire, bury them. any signals leaking out of it. So, and just speaking of electronic targeting, we'll end with this. FARA, Foreign Agent Registration, something, whatever. The nation state was just recently caught geofencing Christians who carry their cell phones to church. S2 Underground reported on this. Phenomenal reporting. What does that mean? Geofencing. They put a box on a map around a church, and then every device that enters that box, that ends up on a spreadsheet in the database. And then that particular phone, the advertising ID for that phone, SSID, MAC address, blah, 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 the nation state intended to deliver ads, paid ads, through Meta, Facebook, Instagram, on X, whatever social, YouTube, whatever social media these people consume, to propagandize those individuals about the horror of October 7th. And so, this is fact. This is just recently released. The nation state geofenced thousands of churches in the United States in order to get the cell phone address of every device that entered that geofence, that entered that church, to then be able to individually target with ads each one of those devices. What if it wasn't ads? Start thinking about that. Because now that they have the device, they know everywhere that device goes. Start thinking about that. Okay? I'll leave you with that. 3 minutes without air. A little bit more, 201, 301, a little sprinkling of 401 here. Beyond, you're going to breathe air. No, it's way deeper than that, homeboys, homegirls. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'm on my way to work, and I will see y'all when I see you. Share the show, and check out refugemedical.com. Get what you need while you can. The world's getting weird again. See y'all when I see you.